Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have John Lee Dumas with us from Entrepreneur on Fire. John, thank you so much for coming on the show again.
Brother, I'm glad to be back. Anytime you want me, you have me, Bronson, so let's ignite.
Let's just do it every Tuesday. How about that?
Yes.
All right, so I want to jump into kind of what you see in terms of trends, because you've had this unique experience of interviewing so many successful entrepreneurs. How many episodes are you up to right now?
Well, I've recorded over 1,600 to date. I've released about 1,550 so far. So
that's insane.
A new one every day, brother.
That is insane. All right, so it's unique to be in a situation where you've talked to 1,500 successful entrepreneurs. What traits do most of them have in common? Maybe not all of them, but what are some of the trend lines you see? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So the biggest commonality that all of my past guests have, and this actually inspired a project last year that I created, but that was freedom. The freedom, the drive towards freedom, the desire to have freedom in their life, just the commitment to really doing what had to happen. You know, I do love that quote. I'll butcher it just a little bit, but it's, entrepreneurs are willing to work 80 hours for themselves, so they don't have to work 40 hours for somebody else. Mm-hmm. That's true, but that's 80 hours of freedom, Bronson. And how do they do that? Like, what really allows them to go from maybe working for the man or the woman, which I did for a long time, to working for themselves? And, now for me, out my window are palm trees in the Caribbean because I live in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. Well, it's because successful entrepreneurs know how to set and accomplish goals, period. Yep. They know how to set and accomplish goals. And most people that struggle with success, with entrepreneurship, with business, with life, with health, with fitness, any of those things, they struggle with those very things, which is setting and accomplishing goals. So that's why back in January of 2016, I actually launched the Freedom Journal, which is a guide to help people set and accomplish their number one goal in 100 days. And that just took off, my friend. We did $453,000 in just 33 days on a $39 journal, by the way. So that was over 9,000 backers. So it was something that really struck a chord, but it's definitely the biggest commonality that I've seen with all my successful guests. They know how to set and accomplish goals. Entrepreneurs who struggle, they don't. That's just a fact. And so that's why I set out to create the Freedom Journal. And it's, obviously helped a lot of people. But, trends that you asked about, that's something that we can maybe get into a little bit more. It's been interesting because I've now been interviewing people for coming up on 5 years. So what was trending back in 2012 is no longer trending in 2017. So that'll be some interesting things to chat about.
So I'm super interested in that, right? So tell me about 2012. What was the old school stuff people were doing that now we know is it doesn't really work, or some of it does, And then what's the new stuff, right? Tell me about that journey, because that's insanely interesting to me.
Yeah, it is. It's funny to be able to say that, 5 years ago, 2012 was old school, but it really was. That's light years.
That's 1,000 years ago.
It's 1,000 internet years ago for sure.
Yep.
Things that were all the rage back then. Guest blogging was huge. It was if you weren't trying to guest blog on somebody's blog or a website or doing this or doing that, you weren't really doing your thing. Podcasting wasn't really a thing yet. People were like, John, instead of podcasting, why don't you just try to guest blog on a lot of people's websites? And that's one thing that I've seen, just the trends have moved away from. In 2012, people had headquarters, people internet browsers, just your non-entrepreneurs, they would visit other people's websites and stuff like that. Whereas today, the things that have changed over these last 5 years is that now we as influencers, we have to go to where people already are. Before, people came to us. Mm-hmm. They came to our websites. They came to our blog posts, they came to our Tumblr, they came to our Reddits, they came to, whatever it might be, our podcast even. But today you have to go where the attention is, and the attention is Facebook, the attention is Instagram, the attention is Snapchat, the attention is live video. That's where the trends have been going for a little while now, and it's officially arrived. I'm doing my second Kickstarter campaign, and it's only a year ago. I didn't do any Facebook Live, just wasn't something that you did. Mm-hmm. I didn't do any Kickstarter Live, didn't even exist. Now these are two of the biggest things that I'm doing just a year later. So live video is massive right now. Really being in front and where people are, going to there. I love how Gary Vaynerchuk says, day trade attention. That's what he does. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to do that, you need to go where people's attention already is. And it's not on your website. I hate to say it. That can be your end result, but it doesn't start there. It can end there.
Yeah, it seems like everything's gotten consolidated. Used to, there was, a million mini empires. Now there's a couple big ones. There's the Kickstarter and the Facebook and the things you mentioned and Instagram, and you have to go there and play ball. And it doesn't matter if you like it or not. That's where things have been consolidated to.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I actually had Michael Hyatt over for dinner last night. He and his wife Gail were here in Puerto Rico. Yeah, they were on, they were on a cruise. They had a kind of like it was like a 7 or 8 hour layover, and so they drove down to our place. We had a nice dinner and we hung out. And this is really relevant because he launched his blog back in 2004, and that was like when it was Mecca blogs. Like people would visit his blog and they would read all day long. His unique visits would be through the roof. Even like 2008, even 2012, this is still the case. He actually launched a podcast in 2012, but it was just like kind of a background for him. He looked at me last night when he was over and he said, John, I consider a podcast listener 10 times more valuable than a blog visitor. And I now get more podcast listens than I do website visits, which has never happened until 2017. So just to see that complete flip-flop, just to see, from where you used to be able to try to build a headquarters, now you just have to create content, put it in the right places in front of the right people. Like Michael Hyatt and myself, we use iTunes to promote our podcast. We use Google Play. We use Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora. So we are putting our podcast where other people already are. And that's where we're having the success.
Yeah, I hope people realize what great insights they're getting right now. Because, when you interview that many people, you're on the bleeding edge. And most people don't get exposed to these insights until it's a year too late. And so it's awesome to be hearing it right now at the beginning of 2017. Let me ask you this. 1,500, episodes here plus. What's been one of the most inspiring stories you've heard? Just in a nutshell. You don't got to go into all the details. But just what's one of those stories where an entrepreneur is just doing it right and they're, they really you think about them when things get hard?
Well, that's a great question because with over 1,550
it's hard to
episodes
remember.
Released and over 1,600 that I, have now recorded, like when you say that, I just kind of have this deluge of all these stories that have kind of come into me. But, I think one that's pretty special that I like to share is actually a company that's pretty relevant to me right now because not only have I become friends with this guest, but we become business partners in a lot of ways. So Richie Norton has been a guest on my show multiple times. In fact, when we're recording this, his episode is going live today for the 4th time of him being on EOFire. And I rarely have repeat guests, so I really have people on 2 times. So the fact that he's been on 4 times shows you that we've really built a bond, and I've really been inspired by what he's done. And one thing that was really exciting about his story for me was when I interviewed him the first time, he was talking about how people were struggling because they had this idea for a physical product, but then they didn't know where to start. And so they went to Alibaba, and it was just a nightmare because when you're on Alibaba, you're like, oh, I'm looking for someone to print my book. You're going to get bombarded. And this is speaking from firsthand experience. From 100 people that are all claiming that they're, the best person to print your book for you and give you all these resources and all of these, referrals, et cetera. But what you're speaking to, which I actually found out after the fact, is like the middleman of the middleman of the middleman of the middleman. And when I went forward and tried to go through this process on my own to create my book, and now I've done 2 physical products, 2 journals, I was just overwhelmed and I gave up. And I was just going to quit my idea and dream to create a physical journal. And I was just going to go and create a virtual PDF ebook, and I was not going to be happy about it because that wasn't what my dream or vision was, but I didn't think there was another option. I interviewed Richie. He told me that, he had that issue, and so he decided to do something about it. He launched a company called Prouduct, and that's when you combine the words proud and product for Prouduct.
Gotcha.
And so it was a really clever name, and he just said, hey, we're here to solve the problem that a lot of people have, and they want to create a physical product. And it was just like the perfect message, the perfect time for me as a podcast host. And after the interview was done, I'm like, dude, Richie, we got to jump on a phone call because I'm having some issues with exactly what you're talking about. We jumped on that call. I told him what I was looking to do. He's like, dude, I will take care of you. He's like, this is why I created Prouduct. He had a team on the ground in China that spoke Mandarin. They found the perfect distributor let me grab it right here. Actually.
Yeah, I want to see this.
the Freedom Journal, this was the idea that I hatched in 2015 that I
Nice.
launched in 2016. As you can see, it's just a
That's
beautiful
legit. I mean, that is
gold
absolutely
embossed.
legit.
Yeah, it's got the elastic band. I mean, this is exactly what I dreamed of when I wanted to create this physical, beautiful journal to accomplish your #1 goal in 100 days. And Richie made it possible. Richie made it happen, which, you know, it was so amazing that I could be inspired by one of my guest stories and then actually create something amazing from that. So that's kind of a long way to answer your question.
No,
but
that's
you know,
awesome.
that's the reality of just an example of kind of serendipity. That's why I'm a big believer. I'm not a woo-woo kind of guy, but put something out there in the world. Like, say what you want, say what you need, say what your dreams, your visions are, and the universe will align to you. It's crazy.
You know what? I agree. I'm not a mystical person.
No.
You know, I believe in hard science, and I like being extremely logical. And at the same time, I put myself out there over and over and over. I allow myself to meet new people, talk about new things, try new concepts, and you collect, you know, you become all these, you know, new experiences. That's awesome. So I want to talk about your new book in just a minute, because I'm actually really excited about that one. Before we get to that, I want to dig into EOFire a little bit, okay? The actual business itself. So there you go, right there. For the people watching, he's pointing at his big logo behind him there. So when I think about EOFire, I think about a well-oiled machine. I mean, 1,500 plus episodes doesn't happen if you're trying to figure out how to do everything every day. How do you think about systems and processes? Because that has got to be core to you. Am I right?
Systems and processes are everything that I do. And to kind of fast forward to the end here, then we can kind of dissect the middle if you want to. I run EOFire, the daily podcast, 4 days a month. I do 2 days where I'm interviewing 15 people on one day, 15 people on the next day. The third day, I'm editing those 30 interviews. And then there's 1 day a month that I upload the next month's 30 interviews. So in 4 days, I'm running a daily podcast. That gives me the other 26, 27 days of the month to do other things. And EOFire is a daily show, my friends. I have sponsors on every single episode that are, you know, are charged anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 per sponsor per episode, because of the amount of listens that we get, et cetera. So when I have those 30 episode 2 days, I mean, that's essentially, you know, up to like $100,000 in sponsorship revenue that I'm doing in 2 days because of the systems and automations that I've crafted.
You know, people that don't think in terms of systems are at an unfair disadvantage. I mean, they just cannot compete with people who understand how to build machines. I think about my job as CEO, it's a machine builder. I have to build a machine and then get out of the way. Build a machine, get out of the way. If I get stuck being a cog at any point, the whole thing's broken.
Well, let's go back to old school. I mean, do you think, because these people existed, by the way, that the company that had one person create every single part of a car, from the lug nuts to the wheel to the frame, and then finally when that one person was done, that car went up for sale, did that person win when Ford said, you know what, we're going to an automation line, you know, we're going to an assembly line, and he was cranking out, I'm making up a number, but you know, it was hundreds to thousands of Model Ts every single day at such a significant cheaper rate than that single person could do. So you have to have those systems. You have to have that automation. It's critical. And if you don't, like you said, you're at a super unfair disadvantage.
And you know what? People, they hear that example and they think, you know, when it comes to blue collar work, they get it. They understand the assembly line with blue collar work, but people have not made the switch to fully understand it with white collar work. You need to create assembly lines in your laptop, not just if you're, you know, covered with grease in, you know, a factory. Systems are for everything, and that's why I think your point is so valid. Now, let me ask you this. I know you spent time in the Army. Is that what got the systems into you? Was that the thing that, like, indoctrinated you to think this way, or was it just a part of you before that?
No, absolutely. The Army showed me exactly what it meant to be disciplined, what it meant to be productive, and what it meant to be focused on a singular task, which, of course, you know, we'll be chatting about in a couple minutes here.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what I learned from the Army. And so then when I went to become an entrepreneur, I was like, wait a second, everybody doesn't do this stuff. Like, not everybody's super disciplined. Not everybody's like being productive. Like, people are actually waking up and trying to recreate the wheel every single day. And, you know, I'm just generalizing. Not everybody was doing that, but a significant part of the influencers were doing things along those lines. I mean, to give you a great example, my good friend Pat Flynn, he said, I had never thought about batching podcasts before JLD came along. And so I was the inspiration for his podcast, Ask Pat, which he launched in 2014, which is a 5-day-a-week show. Because he's like, because John, when I had him on the show or would talk to him, because I used to live near him in San Diego, we'd hang out as friends, and he'd just be like, John would tell me about how he would do 8 episodes in a day or 15 in a day. He's like, I started realizing that I could do the same thing and have systems and automations in place. And so, even people like Pat who are having incredible success financially and in every other way, shape, and form, it just wasn't part of, their box of thinking. It was outside of that box.
Yeah. And, I think about kind of 2 things. If you can get the systems and processes piece down, but then you can also get the 80-20 rule down, focus on what matters. Those 2 together become superpowers because you have a system in place to do the 20% of the stuff that actually matters. And when those combine, I just love that idea personally. All right, let's jump into the new, the fun, what you got going on right now. Hold it up for us. There it is. If you're listening, it's called the Mastery Journal. Another beautiful hardbound, silver-lined book. Tell us, what is the Mastery Journal?
So the Mastery Journal really is a solution to a problem that so many of my listeners have. They would come to me and they say, John, like, we see you doing a daily podcast, you're on Snapchat, you're writing emails, you're speaking at events, you're taking vacations, you're doing, how do you do it all? They're like, we can barely do like a blog post a week. And I'm like, listen, I honestly know that I do have a super advantage here. It took an incredible amount of hard work, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, but I have mastered 3 skills. I've mastered productivity, I've mastered discipline, and I've mastered focus. Those 3 skills I was not born with. Again, discipline was definitely helped and honed during my Army years, but it has to be translated into business and entrepreneurship. Absolutely. So it wasn't like a direct translation. I had to work on and master these 3 skills. And it's been, almost 5 years now that I've been running EOFire. And I've been working on these over and over and over again to just pinpoint, to pivot, to twist, to tweak, to adjust. And I have gotten to the point today where I have mastered these 3 skills. So I said, how can I create a solution in the form of a hardcover journal? Because I saw how successful the Freedom Journal was in guiding people in accomplishing their #1 goal in 100 days. I wanted to bring that same solution to people in the form of that same physical product, because I just saw how that accountability factor worked when it was on your desk, on your book stand, in your book bag. It was just there, beautiful. You were being held accountable by that. So I crafted the Mastery Journal, which is mastering productivity, discipline, and focus in 100 days. I've created systems and processes, self-evaluation within the Mastery Journal that teaches you, that guides you, that is your, just your resource to master these 3 skills, to do it in 100 days so that you can start taking your business and your life to that next level.
It's so cool that you created something like this, because when I hang out with somebody that doesn't know me that well and we start talking, and I just, teach as much as I can when I hang out with people, and they're just like, whoa, like, you got so much to say, there's so much like inspiration hanging out with you. And they just want to hang out with me more. And I'm like, I don't have enough time to hang out with all these people every day. But like, what you've done is basically create a journal so people can hang out with you every day and learn these little skills, learn these tricks, learn these tactics, learn these assessments, learn these viewpoints, these perspectives, these ways of putting it all together. And so that's why a book like this is so important, is it's not just a dude wrote a book. It's you're getting to hang out with John Lee Dumas and soak up that inspiration and that direction, which you wouldn't have the ability to do otherwise. All right, so tell us this. Where can they get this? Is it out right now? Is it coming out soon? What's the deal?
Yeah, so if you're listening to this anytime before February 24th of 2017, then guess what? You're in the middle of our Kickstarter campaign. So we have a Kickstarter campaign going on over at themasteryjournal.com. Head over there. You will be able to see our killer video. By the way, all the B-roll was shot here in Puerto Rico. Amy Porterfield helped us out with the intro. It was really cool.
Nice.
We have images, GIFs. We have just great information, the whole page down. Rewards, by the way. I have a reward of a full day with JLD.
Nice.
There were 2 of them. They were both taken the first day. And by the way, these are not small rewards. These are $10,000 days for a day with JLD. They were both taken. So I actually opened up a third one. So there is a third day now option with JLD at the time of this recording. It
may not be there.
Yeah, so there's some really cool rewards like that. I have one where you can actually be featured on EOFire, because what I'm looking to do is have people invest in the Mastery Journal, crush the Mastery Journal. Then I'm going to bring you on my show, Entrepreneur on Fire, and we're going to talk about your Mastery Journal journey and the success that you've had, and of course your business, etc. And that's a $2,500 package, but you're going to be on my show, which, you know, last month had 2 million listens. So it's a huge show with huge exposure, huge influence. So there's a lot of great opportunities over on the Kickstarter page. If you're watching this after February 24th, no big deal. Just head over to themasteryjournal.com. It's going to be a gorgeous page set up there. You can learn more, etc., and invest in the Mastery Journal.
And just a side note here for people that are, you know, watching and listening is, take notes. This is how you sell something, right? Like, he's got his pitch down. He knows what the point of the Freedom Journal is. He knows what the point of the Mastery Journal is. He knows how to talk about it in very clear, concise ways to resonate with you without having to fumble around and reach for ideas. This is how you sell. And so as a total side note, take notes on that. Because I see, you know, salesmanship when it's in front of me. All right, so I'm going to try to get this episode out as quick as I can, because I want them to be a part of the Kickstarter campaign. I don't want them to hear it and then think it's too late. So I want to try to pump this out as soon as I can. Man, this has been such an amazing interview. All right, so I usually end with 2 final questions, all right? Number 1 is this. After this interview, what are you doing? No matter how boring or awesome it is.
I actually have something that's really awesome that I'm doing after this interview. There outside my door is a dirt road, not too far away, like within 100 yards. And it's a dirt trail path that actually winds up for 2 miles up to this beautiful top of this hill that has a panoramic of this gorgeous community that I live in here in Puerto Rico with a view of the Caribbean. It's a great spot. I try to run there every day. I probably make it there 4 to 5 days a week. It's a 2.1 mile run up, and it's a 2.1 mile run back here. So kind of like a 4.2 mile round trip. I will be doing that today.
Oh, I'm jealous. That's about the distance I run.
Really?
But mine's not as pretty.
Yeah,
I don't have that view, you know?
This is the prettiest run I've ever experienced in my life.
That's awesome. All right, last question. What's the best advice you have for any startup trying to grow? And it may be the things from the Mastery Journal. Maybe those 3 things you already mentioned.
Well, I will shift away from the Mastery Journal for this last point, because I think this Albert Einstein quote made all the difference in the world to me. And that is, try not to become a person of success, but rather a person of value. So any startup that's out there, stop just trying to go and chase after what you think success is for your startup, because it's going to be elusive. I did that for 6 years. I struggled. I was unhappy. I was depressed. I did not find success. When I read that quote, really absorbed it, shifted what I did, and I led with value first. And of course, that was what turned into EOFire, free, valuable, and consistent content. When I led with that, success found me, and that's the best way to go about things. So for that startup, for whatever you're doing, lead with value first. Don't be afraid to have those one-on-one conversations, especially at the beginning. Because although you can't scale one-on-one conversations, you can scale those conversations with the actual advice that you're getting from them, or the feedback that you're getting, or the problems or solutions that one person sharing with you. You can scale that into a massive success. Quick example, Podcasters Paradise. I was having one-on-one conversations with my early listeners. They were saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, John, I'd love to start my own podcast. Do you recommend a resource for that?" And I couldn't, and I kept getting that question over and over again. I launched Podcasters Paradise, $4 million, 3,000 plus members later. That was a good one-on-one conversation I had a few times to open my eyes up to that opportunity. So sometimes do things that don't scale.
Man, I love that advice. I love the idea of focusing on value, and I absolutely agree that business is about value, not I want money, please give it to me. That is not how you grow a business. So I have to end by saying thank you for wearing a backwards hat, making me feel at home here. This is, I'm getting a reputation as.
Well, it's pretty funny because like the video popped up and like mine wasn't up yet, and like I was about to turn on, but I'm like, oh, I have a hat right here because I see boop, and I popped mine on to match you.
I love it. I was interviewing Nathan Latka a couple weeks ago, and he saw that I had a hat on. He's like, oh, I can wear mine also. So he puts his on. It's funny because a lot of people feel more comfortable in a hat, but they feel like they're not allowed to wear them in certain environments. So here you're always welcome to wear a backwards hat on Growth Hacker TV.
Love it.
Hey, John, thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate it, brother.